Hi there, this is Outdoor Gear Chat. We are doing episode 27 today, purification. Can't even say it. That's quite a thirst. I'm joined as always by Cathy. Hello.
Hey Wayne, how you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you very much. You all right? Apart from being
A
a
little
bit
bit
croaky.
croaky. It's
Yeah,
fair to
yeah.
say I'm not in the finest of fettle this morning. But it doesn't matter because we have with us a medical professional. Dr. Will Duffin has joined us again to talk about water purification as Joint Medical Director of World Extreme Medicine, an expedition doctor and adventure racer. Will has got lots and lots of experience to share with us. So welcome back, Will.
Thanks, Cathy and Wayne. Thanks for having me. Yeah, water purification is something we teach on our courses at World Extreme Medicine. It's also something I use myself in my spare time in adventure racing, orienteering races, and just being outdoors generally. So I'm hoping we can talk about this subject in a sensible way. We're talking about water, but because there's so much microbiology and chemistry involved, it can ironically be quite a dry topic. So I'm
Oh, very
hoping,
good.
see what I
Very
did
Oh,
there? Do
good.
you like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Early pun.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. There's plenty more to come. I'm going to try and not get too lost and bamboozle you with too much science. We're going to try and focus on kind of practical aspects of this topic, but it is a really, really good topic for anyone that ventures into the outdoors. Water is the essence of life, and this is something you've got to get right. Otherwise, you will be pooing through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, and that well, just before we started, you said there's no right and wrong, and this sort of well, there is a bit of right and
Yeah,
wrong. There is
actually,
a bit
there
of
is.
wrong because you do end up with a yeah. It's not just a sore tummy. So for me, when Cathy suggested we were going to be talking about this, my starting point was many moons ago, iodine tablets, and then you had to add another tablet to the water that you added the iodine tablet in to take away the taste of the iodine. And
Yeah.
it was this bonkers ratio that you had to do for per liter so many tablets. And thankfully, we're are we a long way from that now, or is there still a use in those?
Oh, I don't think we're that far, to be honest. I mean, there is a bewildering array of different methods and different products that you can use to purify water. And it can be very confusing. And this is why I think we need a kind of sensible, keep it simple approach, because it's user error is one of the biggest reasons why people eat improperly treated water. When we're talking about water purification, we're really talking about two things. We're talking about decontamination from impurities. I mean, that can be anything from, say, mercury that you might find in the Amazon River, or fine rock flour that you get in glacial outflow, to nitrates from runoff from farms. You know, that side of things. That's decontamination. To sterilization, which is where we're removing microorganisms, so the nasty bugs that can make you sick. And broadly speaking, the emphasis really is on sterilization, so killing the nasty bugs rather than on decontamination. But you do need to consider both aspects of that.
So broadly, then, what are the different methods by which we can sterilize and or purify the water that we're going to be drinking? What is there any
So
categorization of stuff?
yeah, so broadly speaking, the most reliable fallback is boiling water. That's very effective. There are a range of different filtration methods. There are various different chemical methods as well. And there's also UV. Those are the main methods for sterilizing and decontaminating water.
And obviously varying levels of time involved in producing some of that. So yeah, I guess the water boiling probably takes the longest. Would it
Yeah,
out of
the
those?
jury's out on how long you should boil water for. They used to say 10 minutes, but that's going to burn through a lot of fuel, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that the most recent stuff I've read, so once you've got to rolling boil, about a minute should be enough. And even at altitude, say Everest water boils at 85 degrees, even there, that's enough to kill pretty much everything. So rolling boil for 1 minute, you should be covered.
That's really important, isn't it, to take into account altitude as well, because a lot of people will be high when they're purifying water. And I know we see a lot of people come into the shops and they're sort of asking about filtration and purification when they're traveling and not necessarily thinking of when they're home. But certainly with the boiling, that's well, up until very recently with the cost of gas, of course, that was potentially a cheaper option. But we've got ranges from sort of £10 for chlorine tablets all the way through to £400 for a fantastic state-of-the-art purification system, and absolutely everything in between. And so there is definitely a cost-effective solution for everybody when they're out and about, to keep yourself safe, not just when you're drinking as well, but I assume, like, if you're needing to clean wounds and things like that, Will, you're going to need to have clean water for that too, aren't you?
Yeah, clean water for food preparation, for washing, for, you know, water is something you use in camp life just ubiquitously. So yeah, there are, as you said there, Cathy, there is just so many different ways to approach this problem. I think that is the source of a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
And I think you have to find a way that works for your specific circumstances, the size of the group, where the kind of water you're going to be treating, and those other factors.
Yeah, and pack size and lightweight as well, and things
right.
like that. And I remember we were, this was a while ago now, but we sold a particular little filter. It was lovely. It was so compact. It was just a beautiful thing to behold. But when you were pumping water through, the actual pump stroke was like 6 centimeters or something. So if you're trying to put through like multiple liters of water, you're sitting there. I'm doing this on the screen that nobody can see.
Visually, it's brilliant.
You've got this tiny little pump, and if you're at altitude, if you're tired, if you're not feeling very well, that's the last thing you want to be doing, is sitting there with this little teensy pump, just like trying to push all that water through.
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head with water filters there, I'm afraid, Cathy. I mean, they are very labor intensive, and the flow rate is always the limiting step, because the size of the filter, the smaller the filter, the more you're going to be able to remove. So you get right down to viruses. So under, say, 0.2 micrometers, so microns in diameter, that pore size, when you get that really fine filter, it's very effective, but the flow rate just grinds right down. And that's why the kind of more industrial sized filters come with these industrial sized pump systems that also add a lot of weight, and there's a lot more to go wrong. So I'm not a big fan of filters. If you want water in a hurry, I think they can be a bit laborious.
Yeah, because I suppose the other option is the gravity filter approach, where you just fill up a bag, hang it up high. That assumes you've got somewhere to hang it up high, of course, and just let all the water just travel through, so you can get on doing what you're doing. And maybe if there's a big group of you, that's a good option. And those filters can actually be swapped out quite readily as well if they get clogged up with glacial dust and everything else. But it does be prepared, you know, when you're coming in to look at filters and things like that. Be prepared to talk about and get asked a lot of questions, and come in and ask us a lot of questions as well, because it really, there is sort of something for almost everything, right down from your little UV rechargeable purifier that you can carry in your pocket if you're just traveling in Europe, for example, which is brilliant, to bigger filtration units that we also sell sort of field repair kits for as well, so you can strip down and clean it in the field. Again, if you've got a ceramic filter, for example, that clogs up, you suddenly find it gets harder and harder and harder to push that water through. Maybe there's a few of you taking it in turns because it's getting harder, but actually what you need to do is open out your filter, give it a good clean, preferably not with your own toothbrush, but giving it a good clean, putting it all back together, back flushing and getting it working again, so you've got that clean water ready to go.
So just, and as I'm listening to you both talking there, and I think I've got a fair idea of what you're talking about, but for the people that are at home that wouldn't know what a filter is all about, so from a microfilter right the way through, what are we talking about? We're talking about something that you can fill with water from a stream, for argument's sake, and like you were saying, the gravity filter, you can hold it up and it basically drips through. Is that?
Yeah, so a gravity filter, if you like, just generally speaking, you can get, it's like a big dry bag, and you can fill it up with water, stick it in the river, fill it up with water, fold over the top, hang it up, and there'll be a tube and then a filter partway down that tube that the water will drip through, and it will go down into another big dry bag, for want of a better description, and to create your clean water in a secondary compartment. And you don't want to get those two cross contaminating. So you've always got your dirty water bag and your clean water bag. With your sort of pump handle filter, some of those can actually fit directly onto something like a Nalgene bottle, and you'll have a tube with a float on it, and that tube with the float is what goes into your water source, and your float is there to make sure that the I can't remember the technical term, the little bit that the water comes in from, allows that to float in the water. It's not down in the dirt where there's loads of mud and microbes and loads of nasty stuff. It means you can get it floating in that lovely white aerated water, and just draw out the water. That'll come up the tube with your pump stroke, and then as you push down, that'll force that water through the ceramic filter. All the nasty bits get choked up and caught in the filter, and that gorgeous, lovely, fresh, cleaning water will come out straight into your drinking bottle, ready to go.
Brilliant.
That's right, Cathy. And the way I look at it is there's two broad stages to filtering. There's you want to remove gross impurities and kind of larger matter from the water using something like a gravity filter, or say a millbank bag, a coarse weave fabric that can just get the muck out, so that at least it's less turbid, it appears clear. And then the second stage is something which is, say, a ceramic or hollow fiber filter, which is very, very fine. And by using a millbank bag or something in the first instance, you're getting most of the stuff out, so it doesn't clog the fine filter at the second stage. And that fine filter's role is to then remove the more detailed impurities, the microorganisms like Giardia and Cryptosporidia, and all the nasties out of it at the same time.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. And that's what I was after, was that explanation, because and again, the technology of those sort of the micro filters, for want of a better phrase, the mini filters has come on a lot over in probably the last 5 years, I think, would be my observation. So they're a lot smaller, a lot more compact, they're a lot easier to carry in a rucksack. But yeah, they have the limits as far as the amount of water that you can filter in the time as well, can't they? So the gravity,
and you can get tiny. I mean, like Cathy said, those larger units are great if you're filtering large volumes of water for a group. But if you're just doing it for yourself and your pack weight is important, like for me in adventure racing, I just carry a Sawyer Mini. I find that really useful. And there's lots of variants on that. It's just really stripped down hollow fiber filter, and you can just use a squeeze bag on it, and that you can use that to generate the pressure to get the water across that filter. And it's even got a little straw, and I just stick it. You can put it inline in your Camelback if you like, or you can stick the straw in the river and just drink from the river, albeit quite slow flow rates, but it's not bad.
Yeah, spot on. And that's where I was going with that. I've done exactly the same with my mini filter as well, as opposed to, like I said, when I first started out, or that doing sort of more distance running over the fells and having to carry a lot of water on a hot day just wasn't practical. I remember having a 3-litre Camelback at one point, and trying to move as quick as I could anyway over the tops was just really hard work with that amount of water. And then you are going to have to resupply at some point, aren't you? So it was that, and that's when we're looking at iodine tablets and the ones that stopped the taste of iodine in the water. It was just
we stopped. Interestingly, iodine is a very effective method of purification, but in 2009, there was a new European safety alert about it, because it can affect the function of the thyroid gland more for long-term use. But that's resulted in there just not being any iodine products available for water purification in the EU anymore. So we just can't buy it, really. That does not say you can't use it if you have iodine. It's a good backup option to have, but most water purification in terms of chemical treatment is now chlorine based as a result in the EU and UK.
That explains why, because like when we lived in the States, then you could get iodine everywhere, and I was wondering why it had effectively vanished. But I think it was. Am I also correct that iodine wasn't ideal to use if you're pregnant either?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, but chlorine is.
Good question, Cathy. Do you know, I'll have to look that one up. I'm not sure on the top of my head. Yeah.
We'll find the answer for that, and we'll stick it in the show notes.
But not the greatest if you're doing a lot of exertion multi-day, I'd imagine, for chlorine, or if you're having high levels of chlorine anyway. It's not going to taste too great at the very least. But anyway,
in terms of its safety profile, even for multi-day stuff and in low resource settings, so disaster response, chlorine is the go-to for for water treatment. There are very few risks associated with it, because remember, it's being used at very low concentrations.
Right. Okay.
And essentially, you're just drinking swimming pool water. It doesn't taste great. It doesn't taste great, but it's safe.
Just yeah.
Without the special ingredients of the swimming pool.
I know, I was going to say that's probably safer in fact. Yeah. So, and we've mentioned a couple of water extraction points, like Will, you've said about, you drinking straight from a puddle or a stream, and Cathy's said about filtering from a stream. Where is it best to get water from? I'm guessing it is going to be your primary thing if you can see a relatively clear flowing piece of water, that it's best to get it from there rather than a muddy puddle that all local wildlife's been wandering through.
Well, do you know what's interesting is in days gone by, the UK was this big natural wilderness, and actually the clean potable water was all around us. Yeah. And the thing that's really changed the game is human habitation and agriculture and industry, which have all mean that all our waterways, our river systems in the UK are now heavily contaminated with agricultural runoff and things like E. coli from animal feces and all this kind of stuff. So even in national parks, even in the Dales and the lakes and Dartmoor, there's grazing and livestock everywhere, which means that there is no safe drinking water. The only place I've been in the UK where there isn't this is the Cairngorms. It's a protected area where there isn't grazing of livestock, and high up there, I think the water really is truly pure. You don't really need to treat it. But everywhere else, you need to be very selective about treating that water and selecting where you get that water from. As a general principle, fast flowing water is the safest. So always choose a fast flowing brook, avoid anything that's stagnant if you can. And the kind of the folklore is that you walk up the stream to check for a dead sheep before you draw the water, and in theory that makes sense, but the nature of river systems and river basins, they're so broad and vast, you'd have to do a lot of walking to truly exclude an upstream contaminant. So in practice, I'm not sure how much value that adds, to be honest. I think just looking at the water, seeing how fast flowing it is, seeing what's above you, are there lots of farms and livestock, or the higher up you are, the less likelihood that happening. And just smelling it and looking at it, seeing how clear it is, just use your senses and your intuition. That's a really good guide for how safe that water is.
Yeah, and I think I know I sort of banged on a bit about forums on previous posts, but this one, when I was just sort of thinking about what we're going to talk about on here, this particular forum just stuck with me, and a lady had just put up a post asking about, she was doing an event, and was water safe to drink along the route of the event. And there was a huge post of people saying, yeah, sweet water, no problem, been drinking it for years, blah, blah, etc. And all the way down, quite a long way down, this lady had posted that she'd actually got a kidney issue. So it was really important she didn't get sick. I thought, oh my gosh. So I normally run with a bee-free filter and also just a regular hydration drink if I'm out with my running vest. I've got one of each on each side of my running vest. So I suggested this, and it totally worked for her. Not only do you not have to carry a ton of water when you're out running, but you've got that water with you that's clean, that you can trust while you're out and about, because for that very same reason, filled up, then run up a bit higher, there's the dead sheep higher up, and it doesn't matter because you've got it protected. And there's so many people and so much pressure on our national parks, and even more so in the last few years, livestock and an awful lot of deer as well, that I don't think it's even worth taking the risk, for the sake of £40, £50, you've got 1,000 litres of water that can pass through that simple little purifier that it's so light. Relatively speaking, there's very little to put in landfill when you're finished. You can actually just for £35 change out the filter. You don't have to buy a whole new bag. So you do have a workable solution there to keep yourself safe, really, from all the little nasties.
I think it's important. I think you see those forums and loads of people going, I've never had an issue, and then somewhere within that usually is one that says, well, I was ill for 10 days and I've never been right since. And it's that's the contrast, isn't it? And I know again, many huge events around the country, there have been people where that sort of thing's happened, isn't it? It's a small percentage, absolutely, but it's right, better safe than sorry, I think, isn't it? Is that, well, I did have, I was pooing quite badly throughout the event and then for the next 10 days afterwards. And
yeah, it's we've got thousands of people on some of these events. But even, I mean, we lived in the mid-90s in the Yorkshire Dales in a house with a natural water supply. And it was absolutely gorgeous. You could walk up on the fell. It was crystal clear. You could look down. There's little frogs looking up at you from the bottom. It was absolutely stunning. The taste of the water was something else. And we frequently got letters from the water authority saying, you know, that you shouldn't be drinking this. It's shocking. It's terrible. You should buy water from us. And we're like, no. And one autumn, I decided to give up alcohol for a month. And my husband didn't. He was busy, happy, continually drinking his wine. And as the month progressed, I just didn't feel right. I just felt, just wrong. And it just culminated in a sickness. And which was unfortunate because we had a house of people visiting from the outdoor company Marmot at the time.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah. So I hauled myself off to my doctor, who took one look at where we were living at my address and just said, you might want to try drinking bottled water for a week and then come back and see me if it hasn't sorted itself out. And sure enough, went on bottled water, fixed just like magic. And I spoke to our landlord and they took a walk up to the water source. And sure enough, a ewe had done what ewes do best. They die next to a water source in the water source
no way.
on a particular occasion. And it took some getting out because she'd been in there a while. And so anyway, we put a cartridge purification on our water supply at home, and that fixed it. No problem thereafter. But sheep are very good at dying. I have learned this over the years.
They do that.
They're extremely good at dying near or in water sources. So, not just from experience out in the hills and the mountains, but actually from my own home. That's why I carry a water purifier every time I go out.
Experience has taught you, and you're right. I mean, it can be inconvenient getting diarrhea. It's not pleasant, but also it can be quite serious, particularly if you're overseas. Some of the pathogens or nasties that you can get in the water supply and contaminated water can make you very sick, and you can get bacterial dysentery that can make you severely dehydrated and potentially be culminate in a crisis emergency situation. So you have to show due diligence like you have there, Cathy.
And I guess that's the difference when we get into the difference between chucking a couple of Imodium down your neck and going, I really probably need to see a doctor now. You know, it's that if you have just got a bit of a sore tummy for a little while and you can switch to bottled water, it's getting medical advice about it, I guess, isn't it? If it is prolonged, if it's going on for a bit longer than a couple of days, maybe, would that be?
Yeah. So most gut infections, or what we call gastroenteritis. If you're overseas, you might call it traveler's diarrhea, which is where you have a bit of some loose stool, maybe a bit of nausea, a bit of stomach cramps. Most cases are mild, and you can self-manage that by just keeping your fluid intake up. It's very easy to get dehydrated. Sometimes things like Imodium to reduce the frequency of your bowel movements can be helpful, and just riding it out. But sometimes, particularly if you have nasty bacteria or protozoa, something like Giardia or E. coli, that you can get a nastier form of dysentery that may need antibiotic treatment or kind of medical input. And the things to look out for is if you're having kind of florid, persistent diarrhea, it's just flowing out of you and you just can't keep your fluid intake up to match that. So you're feeling very weak and pale and listless and dehydrated. If you have blood in the stool or severe abdominal cramps or persistent vomiting, or just persistent diarrhea beyond the 2-week mark, almost all infective diarrhea resolves by 2 weeks. So if it goes on for longer than that, those would be the times you'd want to get some medical advice.
The 2 week, 2 weeks. So a bit in between times, literally just moving to a trusted water source should be enough. Keeping hydrated. Would sort of not eating food for a few days help, or would you better just to continue eating and drinking as much as you can just to keep your strength up, do you think?
Yeah, I think you listen to your body. I mean, some people advise avoiding dairy products, you can get a transient lactose intolerance during diarrheal illness. But otherwise, if you feel able to eat, it's probably good to keep your stomach up. I don't think there's any evidence to show that resting your stomach by not eating is going to hasten your recovery. So yeah, there's no hard and fast rules on that.
Yeah. I just remember being passed a large bowl of curd and rice to help my stomach when I was feeling very poorly. And curd and rice
you only want bland food, don't you, when you're ill like that? I've had traveler's diarrhea. It's awful. It really knocks you out, doesn't it? It's not very nice.
No, it is miserable. And hopefully, you know, for most folk, it is just a case of feeling a bit miserable, a few stomach cramps, going to the toilet a lot, and then coming out the other side. Nobody wants the worst case scenario of waking up somewhere with a drip in you and having to deal with that little outcome.
You just mentioned something then, Will, that I did. It escaped my brain. Just as Cathy started talking, I've got to mention. Oh, it's diarylites. Sorry, those sort of electrolytes and those salt replacements, electrolyte replacements as well. Would that be a good idea if you have got the traveller's tummy stuff?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, a really good thing to have in your first aid kit. Particularly if you lose lots of fluid and salt through your gut, you need to replace both fluid and salt. And electrolyte, the concentration of salts in electrolyte solution is a very specific value that helps to rehydrate you more effectively than just fluid alone.
And I think we've spoken about that before. Was it like that osmosis effect?
Osmolality,
where it's going to be, your body's better going to absorb water and hydrate you with those salts and so on. And I guess there's loads of stuff on the market. The little sachets are brilliant. That you can get from Boots and stuff, which traditionally people have used with kids, I guess. But there's loads of stuff on the market now for endurance athletes, I suppose, in variant formats, but I guess some of which, again, affect your gut in a negative way if it's got too much sugar in it, for example. Anyway, but the purer the better, I suppose, and some of the stuff like that. But 2 weeks is a long old time to be poorly with something like that, though, isn't it? If you're in unfamiliar surroundings.
Oh, it's horrible. And it is if that's a big trip for you and that's your 2 week holiday as well. It's rotten, isn't it, when you get poorly. Yeah, I have to say, actually, the little bee-free purifier I was talking about earlier, we used that with the kids when we were traveling around India. That was their one rule, is that any water had to go through that, and they were problem-free for the whole 2 weeks. But more importantly than that, it passed my mother's trip to Mallorca test, because my mum is of the generation that pulls out her ice cubes out of her drink because she doesn't trust the foreign water. And she was absolutely mortified temporarily when I told her she'd been drinking tap water. I just put it all through the bee-free because I was like, I'm not having that much plastic. I'm not buying that much plastic with all bottled water.
I hate that. In low income countries, low resource countries, you're just relying on bottled water. It's so wasteful, isn't it?
It's so wasteful. And you just see the mountains of bottles everywhere. And as much as we want to recycle them and turn them into textiles, that just, that's not a workable global solution yet. The waste is horrendous. So from an environmental point of view, it's worth looking at just managing your own water. And we are, I think, actually very, very lucky in this country with the quality of our drinking water, because when we lived in the States, the drinking water there really wasn't that good. While we lived there, I kind of did some research into it, and it turned out the governor of the area had sold a gravel quarrying contract to his brother and they were busy quarrying all the gravel that was the natural aquifer for the water for that region.
That's no good.
And then while we were in at Mallorca again, I was wondering why it was suggested we shouldn't drink the water there, but that was because of the high sodium content, apparently. But we did turn up to one accommodation with the magnificently labelled tap in the kitchen that said drinking and cocking water. So I managed not to add in an extra O. I left it like that. Oh, come on,
I
surely
know.
not.
I was like,
That
I
took
was
a
going,
while.
what?
That took
What
a
he did? I know. Penny, you could see the penny drop then, couldn't you? Yeah. Sorry. Cocky water.
Yeah, it tickled me knowing that one.
Fantastic. So I guess we're coming up to sort of the final 5 minutes ish. So yeah, is there any takeaways that we need? Is I guess it's horses for courses, I suppose. Is it? It depends what you're going to be going and doing, where you're going to be going and doing it, what the best method of sort of filtration purification is for you.
Yeah, that's right, and it depends on your circumstances. And for me, you know, and like Cathy, weight is an ease of use of very important factors for me. So I've in recent years I've moved more towards tablet based, so chlorine based treatment methods. And you know, I have 2 500 ml soft flasks in my running vest in the front, and then I sometimes have a 1.5 liter in the back, and I just have a little stash of chlorine tablets in my running vest, and I just take them out when I fill a water source. Sometimes I'll filter that through a buff, or I've got like a little muslin type bag that I can get the grit out of with, and then I just pop half a tab in each thing in the front and 1.5 in the back, and 30 minutes later it's ready to drink. And that works for me. But if you've got a little portable filter that goes in line with your system, that works for many people. And some people use the SteriPens. They just pop that in their flask and they whip that around for 90 seconds and that works for them. So I think it's just a case of just going out and trying different methods and seeing what works for you.
But I guess not trying it out in country, not trying it out when you get there, because it's important to try, as with everything, try it before you actually arrive or before your event or whatever, rather than try it somewhere like Dartmoor or the Lakes or Peak District or so on. Yeah,
it's important to know about the limitations of whatever method you use. So, for example, I know that if I'm using only chlorine-based water treatment, if it's cold water, very alkaline water, or it's quite turbid, so the high organic load in it, I know that's going to be less effective. And therefore I might want a backup method. So that's where I take maybe my Soya Mini as well as a second method. So it's another good principle, as well as trying out any method, getting familiar with it, learning about its limitations and when it's going to be less effective, is also having a second method if you need it. So remember, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So I always have like something else as well, just in case.
Cool. And we did actually, just before we came on air, we talked about the MacGyver method, Will.
Oh, yeah.
What to do if you don't have anything at all with you to filter your water. What do you do?
That's a great question, Cathy. I suppose we're talking about a kind of survival approach now. If you don't have all of this gadgetry with you, what's the best way of approaching this problem? So you can make your own little water filters. So if you've got access to any kind of charcoal or sand or even just stones, and putting them in a bag and then breaking a hole in the bottom and just pouring water through that will get rid of quite a bit of nasties. So just a crude filter using some kind of waterproof bag with a hole in the bottom, pouring water through that. Then just a body of water, just leaving it standing still can be very effective, because all the sediment naturally with gravity will fall to the bottom, and the top layer of that water will be the cleanest.
Yeah.
And then if you take that water and you leave it in the sun, so UV light, even from the sun, is very effective biocidal. So if you could leave a clear plastic bottle of water, that filtered water, in the sun for 6 hours, you'll kill pretty much everything in it. If you've got good amount of sunlight. If it's overcast, you might need up to 3 days for that to be effective.
Well, that's a long-term plan.
And yeah, quite. You're going to be pretty thirsty when the time comes around. But the other thing you can use, and this is a great trick, is a solar still. So water, if you have a body of water, if you put say a bit of tent or tarp material over the top in a cone shape, you can use a stick to create a cone. Overnight, or particularly with heat, that water will evaporate, and then it condenses on the inner surface of that material, and then drips down, and you can collect it with a kind of some kind of receptacle at the base. And that water, because it's evaporated and condensed, it will be drinking safe. It will be completely purified. So solar still is the other kind of survival technique, and you can Google that. There's loads of great YouTube videos on how you can make those.
Yeah. So you could lick the side of your inner tent in the morning and it's safe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I sleep in a single skin tent, and the amount of condensation that thing produces. Yeah. I could have a full cup of tea out of that, my own body sweat. Yeah. But yeah, in theory, it is safe to drink. Yes.
Oh, awesome. I never knew that. That's fantastic.
So there's you. I know, Cathy, previously you've gone, it's all minion, it's your sweat and everything overnight, is you, yeah, and actually it's relatively pure. Yeah,
I'm going to be first up in the morning on expedition, busy licking the inside of my tent. Yeah.
Scraping it off.
Yeah. Water.
No, it's fine. Dr. Will said it's all right.
It's right.
Well, yeah, because it's funny you said, I mean, particularly single skin tents, you get a colossal amount of condensation. To the point, actually, my husband nearly died in his single skin tent because they didn't vent before they went to bed. They just tied, they didn't unzip it. All the condensation on the inside froze. So they basically were in an igloo, and luckily woke up breathing shallowly, opened the zip and like, oh, so yeah, that would have been a very embarrassing headline.
But yeah, and then it all drips onto your down sleeping bag, and you get cold, and it's bad times.
Oh, the fun. Oh gosh, but I think that probably wraps us up on water purification. That's just been fab. Learned loads today. That's great. Yeah,
brilliant, and I love that the MacGyver version. But yeah, you're in a fair amount of trouble to be ending up in that situation, I guess. And yeah, Andy, but yeah, handy to know the thing about the plastic bottle as well, just in sunlight. That's, and I guess the UV thing, we never talked about UV very much, though, Cathy. Actually, you said you've got some stuff that you sell where there's just you can flash a UV light over.
Yeah, it's a tiny wee thing. It'll fit in your pocket, and it's actually got just a rechargeable battery, a permanent battery, and you plug it in via a USB. So only a workable solution if you're traveling somewhere where you've got access to USBs. Yeah, as Will said, you just turn it on and swish it round, follow the instructions.
Oh, that's the SteriPen. Oh, sorry, I hadn't made that link. Sorry, Mike.
I mean, it's the same old thing. It's brand name versus actually what it is or what it does. It's a tiny, super small and compact solution, but only ideal if you have access to a USB. But I think that's it. We've got 1 minute to finish off. Wayne, I'll let you do the thanks.
Yeah, thanks to Will for joining us again. As always, just amazing. I love sitting just in awe, sitting listening to you. So that was episode 27, water purification. Quite a thirst, and we'll be back again very, very soon. So thanks to you, Will. Amazing.
No worries.